Emergency maintenance calls happen when something is already wrong. Story 1. I was on call that night because the building's HVAC system had gone rogue again. The dispatcher's voice crackled over the speaker. Room 204, third floor. Temperatures dropping 2 degrees every minute. 10 minutes, no one inside. The words felt empty, but the building was empty. By 2 a.m., the hallway lights were the only thing keeping the night shift from swallowing itself whole. I grabbed my flashlight, a portable multimeter, and the worn keycard that opened the service doors. The elevator shivered as it descended, its metallic sigh echoing through the concrete shaft. On the way up, the intercom crackled with static, a voice that sounded like a cough swallowed by wind. "Someone's in there?" I didn't reply. I wasn't supposed to speak to anyone when the alarms came. The third floor was a cold, silent slab of carpet and polished steel. The hallway lights flickered on a half-second rhythm, like a failing heartbeat. I stopped in front of room 204. The door, a plain metal panel, was ajar. A thin line of freezing air slipped out, carrying a faint smell of mildew and something metallic, like rusted blood. Pushing the door wider, the flashlight's beam fell on a room that should have been empty. The thermostat displayed 7 degrees Celsius, but the air felt like 2 degrees Celsius. My breath fogged in front of me, and I could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock, except the hands were moving backward. Somewhere in the room, a low hum rose, not from any machine I recognized, but from the walls themselves, as if the concrete were resonating. On the desk, a maintenance log lay open, its ink smudged as though it had been written with trembling hands. The last entry read, 13 March, temperature dropping, sensor glitch, reset attempted, no response, something wrong. Below it, the date was wrong. It read March 13th, 2024, but the log's watermark showed 2021. I turned my multimeter to the thermostat and touched the leads to the terminals. The needle shot to 0, then spiked to a random number, over 500 degrees Fahrenheit. The display on the unit flickered, showing a face, faint and distorted, that seemed to stare back. I blinked, and it was gone. In its place, a single word scrawled in a hurried script. Help. A sudden heavy thud came from the ceiling. I raised my head. The light fixture above had swung down a half-inch and was now hanging at an angle, casting a jagged shadow that looked like a hand reaching out. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out the building's usual night shift hum. I tried the door. It was locked now, the safety latch clicking into place with a sound that felt deliberate, like a lock being turned from the other side. My flashlight flickered, and for a breath-long instant the hallway beyond was illuminated by a sickly green glow, as if the building itself were bleeding light. I fumbled for my phone, but the signal was dead. The building's intercom crackled again, this time a voice, distant yet unmistakably human. You're late. The words were whispered, not spoken, as though they were being pressed through the walls. I pressed my ear to the metal door, feeling the vibrations of something moving inside. The temperature dropped another degree. My breath froze in a cloud that clung to the glass. Then silence. The hum stopped. The light steadied. The door clicked open on its own. When I stepped out, the hallway lights were normal, the clock's hands moving forward again. The elevator doors opened, and a janitor in a stained uniform stared at me with eyes that seemed too wide, too aware. You should have stayed, he said, and before I could answer, he vanished into the stairwell, his footsteps echoing like a warning. I left the building that night with my shoes soaked in something cold and metallic. The maintenance log stayed behind, its pages turning on their own, each entry ending in the same single word. Help. I never took another night shift after that, and the building's third floor remains sealed, except for the occasional faint hum that reminds me something is still waiting, still wrong. Story 2. I was 3 months into the night shift at Mercy Hospital when the first call came in. Room 209. Ventilation failure. Need a fix now. The voice crackled, half gasping. The hospital was already a ghost of itself at 2 in the morning. Fluorescent lights flickered. The corridors echoed with the distant wail of a monitor alarm, and the night care nurses moved like silhouettes, heads bent in fatigue. I grabbed my toolbox, slid into my steel-toed boots, and followed the dim green arrows painted on the floor. The farther I walked, the more the building seemed to shrink, its walls pressing in like the sigh of an old man. The only sound was the soft hum of the air-handling units, a metallic sigh that grew louder with each step. Room 209 was on the third floor, at the far end of a wing that the night shift rarely used. The door was ajar, a thin sliver of stale, cold air seeping out. I pushed it open. The room was empty, no patient, no bed, just a single humming ventilation shaft protruding from the ceiling. The display panel read, "Error 13, System Failure." I knelt, opened the access panel, and reached for the fuse. The metal was cold, unnaturally so, and as I pulled it, the lights flickered, casting the room into a strobe of half light and darkness. My breath formed a thin veil in the sudden chill. Something clicked, an echo that sounded like a door shutting far away. My radio crackled. "Maintenance. Are you there?" A nurse's voice, thin and strained, whispered, "Something's wrong with the air. It feels wrong." The words hung, heavy, like a breath held too long. I replaced the fuse, but the meter stayed red. A low, guttural thrum rose from the vent, not the usual whir of motors, but a slow, rhythmic pulse, like a heart beating beneath the concrete. As I leaned in, a faint metallic scent washed over me. Blood? Rust? The scent of iron and cold sweat. Then the ventilation grill shuddered, and a cold draft surged forward, carrying with it a soft, indistinct whisper. I could barely make out the words. "Leave." The voice was both distant and right behind my ear, as if spoken through the walls themselves. I jerked back, the flashlight on my head casting a trembling beam across the room. The hallway outside was dark, the walls unmarked, the exit a mere rectangle of black. My radio sputtered again, this time with static, then a single clear tone. Ding! And a voice that wasn't human. "You cannot leave." The door to the room slammed shut with a weighty thud that reverberated through my bones. I tried the handle. It was locked, but not by a key. The metal was fused, impossible to move. Panic rose like the hiss of steam, and I banged on the door, shouting for help that never came. In the silence, the hum from the shaft grew louder, morphing into a low chant. I could feel the vibration through the floor, a rhythm that matched the pulse I'd felt in the air. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat a reminder that I was still alive, still being held against something far older than this hospital. The night finally gave way to dawn, the first weak light slicing through the blinds. The door creaked open on its own, as if the building exhaled. I stumbled out, my clothes cold, my hands trembling. The nurses stared, eyes wide, as if they too had heard the whisper in the ventilation. I left the night shift after that. The calls kept coming, but I never answered a ventilation failure after midnight again. Some nights, when the wind whistles through the empty corridors, I swear I can still hear that metallic thrum, an echo of a room that never wanted to be fixed, a reminder that not every malfunction is mechanical. Sometimes the wrong thing is simply awake. Story 3. The storm howled as I pulled up to the lighthouse, my truck's headlights bleeding through the rain. The call had been urgent. "Generator failure. No heat. No power. Someone's got to fix it now." The address was 3 towns over, past the last gas station, where the road dissolved into dirt and the trees closed in like conspirators. I didn't care. I needed the paycheck. The lighthouse keeper's cottage was dark except for a single flickering bulb in the front window. A man in a soaked parka met me at the door, his face a mask of soot and exhaustion. "You're the electrician?" he asked, though it sounded like a statement. I nodded. He handed me a key ring with one key. "Generator's in the basement. Fix it, please." The basement? Lighthouses didn't have basements. I followed him inside. The air smelled of salt and mildew. He descended a spiral staircase, vanishing into shadows. I heard his boots clack against concrete, then a door slamming. When I called out, my voice echoed hollow. The flashlight in my tool belt buzzed to life as I stepped onto the stairs. The first flight was narrow, the second sloped oddly, and by the third, the walls felt damp against my shoulders. The key fit a rusted lock. Inside was a room of machinery, the generator cold and silent. Wires snaked across the floor like dead snakes. No, this wasn't right. Lighthouses drew power from the grid. There were no basements, no third floors. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister. "You okay?" I hadn't told her where I was going. I typed, "Yeah, just a quick job," and the screen dimmed, revealing something behind me. A door. I hadn't seen it before. Wooden, paneled, with a brass plaque. MV Dolores Crew Quarters, my grandfather's ship, sunk in '63. I'd been 5, but Mom still cried about it. I turned. The staircase was gone. Just the door and a rusted handle leading upward. The flashlight sputtered. I opened it. Stairs. A tight spiral, the same as below. But these climbed. I took them, one hand on the wall, until I emerged into a room that shouldn't exist. A dormitory. Foul air, mildewed bunks. And on the far wall, a whiteboard covered in red markings. Tally marks, some scratched out, others fresh. I counted them. 37. My tool belt felt heavier. The flashlight died. In the dark, I heard it. A whisper, low and wet, like seawater sloshing in someone's throat. It came from the bunks. I backed away, but the exit was now the door I'd found on the basement. I ran down, 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 until I burst into the cottage's main room. Empty. No parka. No man. No key. Just a photo on the mantel. The lighthouse, 1963, with a crew in front. I recognized the face in the middle, my grandfather's. And there, in the back, a younger version of the man who'd let me in. The power flickered to life. Heat roared. The generator's hum vibrated through the walls. I left my tools behind. But every stormy night, they still buzz with that same static. And sometimes, in the dark, I swear I hear the clack of boots on stairs. Coming up. Counting.